Welcome to Tune In to the World of Animation, the weekly podcast that brings you interviews with experts from all aspects of the world of animation. I'm your host, Tee Busustow, ready to sit back, relax, and tune in to the world of animation. Our guest today is Craig Clark. His background is very similar to a number of guests we've had on our show. But what interests me about Craig is how he's ventured now into new technologies, such as podcasts and computer wallpaper. But first, Craig, I'd love you to tell me the story of how you were discovered while drawing cartoons for your mother's first grade class.
Oh, wonderful. Yes. Hello, everyone. It was a very interesting story. I used to go into the classroom of my mother, who was a teacher at Santa Monica, and she had first grade classes, and she's been teaching about 40 years or so. And I would just come in and draw cartoons for the kids. And one time, there was a pupil in the class that his father was an animator. His father came in with Corny Cole. Sam Curson is a man's name, and the boy's name was Wolf Curson. Of course, he was 6 years old at the time. And saw some of my drawings. And at that point, they ran the second Flip Wilson special, believe it or not. So we saw that in class. And at that point, they liked my stuff so much that they invited me to come down to Duck Soup Productions in Santa Monica to meet the crew. And at that point, I met Dwayne Crowther, who was working there at the time. He's the main instigator of Duck Soup Productions. And he kind of took me under his wing. And, yeah, literally.
Excuse me, I'm flapping my arm here,
right.
For those you can't see.
Yeah. And I would start doing animation tests, and he would kind of go over it and correct it and shoot the tests at the tail end of his commercials. And, I would skateboard down from Malibu after getting off the bus there, like Ocean Park area, and have my animation drawings under my arm and skateboard down Main Street and take my stuff to the studio to be shot and critiqued. And there were a lot of creative people there at the time. It was Grim Natwick was in and out.
Jeez Marie.
Ambi Palawota was there, and Artie Wong, who I'd met and I later worked for later. And Corny Cole had a studio right adjacent to Duck Soup, so he was in and out quite a bit. And so it was really a creative time. And it was really fun for a 14-year-old to realize that, hey, you can actually do this stuff.
Now, when you were drawing these drawings in your mother's class,
right,
it wasn't animation, it was just cartoons, right?
They were still drawings of mostly television cartoons at the time. So I had come up with, at age 10, this collection of biannual groups, all the cartoon characters that were on television at the time. This was before VCRs or anything like that, so we had black and white TV, and I would sit down and sketch it. And if I wanted to know the colors of the characters, I'd go down to the Newberries and look at the comic books or the coloring book covers, and then come home and color them in, and I'd know what they'd look like. So it was really fun.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
How long had you been drawing before you were discovered by?
Let's see. I'd always been drawing since I was a little kid. Probably I started at age 6, because we had all the stuff running in the local television. Mm-hmm. Channel 11 would run all the cartoons. I'd see all those. And Channel 13, of course, so I just love that stuff, starting from Gigantor in '64. So that's the first remembrance of something I really enjoyed.
So you'd go down to Duck Soup once a week or whatever, and they'd actually shoot your frames. Or...
Yeah. They'd put them on the tail end of the commercials, Hi-Con Film. At that point, they were really gracious to do that, and I kept some of the tests as well. And I'd sit down. At that point, that was before I had an animation disc. I didn't know what it was. I just took the stereo cover and typing paper and taped it up and did my stuff. So I remember the first scene I did was a recreation of a Droopy cartoon, and I did everything on ones. It was all smooth. And Dwayne came over it and went over it and really snapped it up with his loose drawings and stuff like that. So I really learned about timing and looseness in drawing. Uh-huh. So yeah, that got me going on how to approach it.
Yeah. And then I think you said that you actually got hired by Duck Soup.
Yeah, so I kept in contact with them, and after high school, I enrolled in college, and during the summer times, I would work there on commercials. So, and during Christmas vacations too. So it was between Duck Soup and towards the end of my tenure in college, it was a spun buggy a little bit. And so some of the directors there at the time were Frank Terry, Corny Cole was doing layouts. Of course, Dwayne was there. Roger Chenard was there. And Randy Akers was there at the time. So at that point, it was like the large version of Duck Soup. They had moved from the Main Street location in Ocean Park to where they were on, was it this 11th Street near Montana, around that area. So at that point, I was like the main assistant over there, working on those great cereal commercials. So,
wow.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Wow.
Yeah.
What did you take in college? Was it something to lead into animation?
It's funny. I went to Cal State Long Beach, and they didn't really have an animation department per se. So what Duck Soup recommended me do was go ahead and learn how to draw as well as I could. So that's, every semester I would take life drawing. So it was a mixture of life drawing, illustration, which was kind of a semi-major, and graphic design. And within the graphic design department, they had an animation camera, and that's where I shot my 2 films.
Ah.
So, yeah, I just worked on my portfolio and drawing skills, and, eventually when I graduated, I had 2 films to show, and that helped.
And, of course, you had a history with them.
Yes, I did. And it really kind of helped, especially after graduation, finding freelance work, because some of those directors have moved around to other studios, like a Film Fair and Spun Buggy and West Indigo. I don't know if you remember them.
No.
They were in Culver City. They did a lot of Charlie Tuna commercials.
Oh.
So it was a lot of commercial stuff. So after the tenure in commercials, I kind of moved into effects because I wanted to move up into traditional, character animation. But I realized that I might have a little faster opportunity of moving up if I moved into effects. So I started working for Tigerfly, which is in Santa Monica, run by Arnie Wong, and started doing effects animation.
Now, excuse me, but when you talk about effects animation, this is before computer animation came in?
This is, all hand-drawn. Yeah, optical printed, hand-drawn effects animation.
I see.
Yeah. So, at that point, there were a lot of call them the post-Tron television shows. First effects shot was on Automan, which was the son of Tron. Same producer, and a lot of the same folks, same camera that Tron was shot on, believe it or not. And we started doing electricity effects with that. And that was with Desi Arnaz Jr.
Have you gotten involved at all in computer animation?
At that point, it was pre-computer animation. This was 83. And up to 84, that's when they first started using very simple computer animation. We would take the motion control algorithms that Tondreau used for some of the curve plotting. This was on Star Chaser in 3D. I don't know if you remember that one.
Right, I do.
The Steve Hahn's production. So that was the first time that we used computer animation to generate the spaceships. And it was plotted out and Xeroxed and diverged for left eye and right eye to realize your 3D effect. And, composited. Very laborious. We basically, it was, you would have to come up with 6 different extremes, X, Y, Z, mathematically, and plot them out on graph paper and, draw your curves and come up with numerical coordinates for each extreme. And the computer would interpolate between those extremes, and that's how you get your computer animation, something that programs do automatically today.
Yeah.
But, that was the first foray into it, yeah.
I imagine that sort of background is, a lot of kids that come up through computer animation, they don't know all that original stuff.
Yeah. It was kind of an offshoot of the motion control, which was kind of more of the Star Wars algorithms that were using. The Apogee wrote some of the earlier stuff, for Star Wars, and we were using those machines.
You also mentioned you worked at Klasky Csupo.
Klasky Csupo,
Right.
yes. The early days of Klasky Csupo. Now, the first time that I had met Gabor, he was working at Spun Buggy. And he just left Hanna-Barbera and started his own little company out of a spare bedroom in the back. And I was assisting him on a Dutch Boys paint commercial. So at that point, he called me back for more freelance. And he started pulling more commercials out of his house with his wife. And there was just like 6 of us in the room. And the dog was running around and licking your elbows and all that stuff. I had no idea that it would become this huge operation that it became in the 90s.
Right.
But it was just amazing.
So Klasky is his wife?
Arlene Klasky, and Gabor Csupo.
Because I've always heard Gabor Csupo, but I hadn't. Funny, when you say the names alone, they're much easier to say than when you say them together. For
That's
me,
true.
anyway.
I know. Yeah.
So later you got into storyboard, layout, design, 3D animation, technical directing, and
Right. So I would just kind of vacillate between whatever was in vogue at that point, and I was always trying to learn. So there was one point before the computers broke the ground that I felt that I'd known everything, from blue screen compositing, and then the computers came, and then oh boy, it's like going to school, every day. So there's always something to learn there. But I'd go back and forth between storyboards and layout. The first 3 seasons of The Simpsons, I worked on that in the opening title animation that's still running today. And we animated the first season by hand here in Hollywood. And then I had left. I went to London because I wanted to travel the country a little bit. I went there for a year and worked at Five Goes West doing effects animation.
Oh.
And then I came back, and it was the second season of The Simpsons. It was huge. I mean, it was just, there's stores in Westwood for The Simpsons. It was huge.
Right.
We had no idea because I'd
Sure.
never seen it on the air, before I left. And it's still running to this day. So that's cool.
Yeah, there's a little bit in Tom Cito's book about how it got started, and being a little bit on the Tracy Ullman show, and
right, yeah.
So were you involved when it was just the interstitial on the Tracy Ullman show?
I was out of the studio. I didn't start with The Simpsons till we did a Butterfingers commercial right before the first episode.
I see.
So I came back to Klasky Csupo at that point. See, each time I came to Klasky Csupo, we had more and more equipment. Yeah, he had a larger office. They had camera service, and that was kind of his cash cow that brought in the work for him. And then he got a motion control system. That kept him going. And then he rented the space in the Clampett building, Sody Clampett's building. And that's where we did the first Simpsons episodes.
Was that the office over on Seward?
On Seward, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He had one camera room at one point, and then when the Simpsons got picked up, then, he expanded. So right prior to The Simpsons, I was doing a lot of Peanut stuff. So I animated like 5 Peanut specials. So I was doing like a few of those with Bill Melendez down the street.
So what do you think of Bill Melendez?
He's a great guy.
Yeah.
He's a great guy. Yeah, he just it was wonderful because I'd never worked on the Peanuts, and I'd always wanted to. And when I first started on it, I worked in house a little bit. And then he trusted me enough with the animation. I just worked at home, which is unheard of. So I just had a little place by the beach, and I'd drive in every 2 weeks with my stack of stuff, and he loved it. It was great, And, he'd sit down and show me some stuff, which is great. From time to time, I'd go back to work with Bill. Yeah. But he's a great guy. Does great stories. And,
Yes, he does.
Yeah, he does.
Great story. I remember I was at some event a year or so ago. Oh, I know. It's that... 50 years of animation or something, and they give awards out to various people that have been in the business for 50 years or more. Yeah. And Bill was up there to do a presentation, because he, of course, had been in the business for 80 years or something.
Yes, I know.
And he was telling these great stories. Everyone was laughing and having a great time, and the moderators said, could you make this your last story, Bill, or something like that?
There's so many of the Termite Terrace stories.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So now, I wanted to ask you, when you were trying out all these different areas of animation, do you remember if it was just because you had a lot of interest, or if you were trying to figure out a way of covering all your bases for the future?
Well, I was very curious. There was that too. I wanted to be employable, and the more skills you had, the better. Because I was working for a lot of smaller shops, and at that point, then the more versatile you are, the more that you can be used on different jobs.
Right.
But then when you work with the larger studios, you're doing one specific thing, and so you have to pick that one specific thing, and you have to really fall in love with it. So, as you're doing most of the computer. Live action films, it really broke down. There's a few films like Mortal Kombat where I'd handle stuff all the way through, animate the stuff, composite the stuff, and grade it and put it out, But most of the larger productions, it's just such a pipeline that if you're an enveloper, you're a rigger, enveloper, setting deformations, for geometry, to move around arms or that type of thing. You weight different geometry to favor one or the other, so you can get your character to move around without any kind of creases and that type of thing.
Oh.
Called it enveloping. Yeah.
Wow, what a specialty.
Yeah. The first time I saw just an enveloper, I think it was up at ILM, on Casper. There was just guys that were just enveloping, there's trackers, and they would just, track live action footage and spit out the data to the animators, and the animators, you would just animate, wouldn't texture, wouldn't even render it really. You send it out to the TD because he would take your animation files and go ahead and render it. And then the TD would do his 8 different passes and send it out to the compositor. This is for live action. And composite all the different layers that you had, and then you go from there. But, it's an assembly line, It is.
When I see an animated feature, particularly, more so I think in computer animation, they have this long list of credits. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, you need it. Because, the rendering times for some of these frames are just astronomical sometimes, if you don't really break it down. Yeah. But, it's necessary. It's necessary, because you want to come up with a model that's usable from all perspectives, so, you have to make sure that's going to work.
Well, let's take a brief break here to get our commercial in, and we'll be right back. I have to say now, instead of don't touch your dial, don't touch your keyboard.
Okay, that's great.
Okay, see you in a minute.
All right.
30 seconds. The UPA Legacy Project is an organization dedicated to collect, restore, and exhibit the films of UPA Pictures, the studio that many feel set the standards for modern animation. You can find out about the documentary feature being produced by visiting www.upapix.com. That's upapix.com. Okay, we're back again with Craig Clark. We've been talking about computer animation. You're really a versatile guy. It sounds like you've done everything in animation.
Oh, yeah. Well, you're always learning. That's the deal. Yeah. So later, I figured out, am I going to continue, learning all the tools, or am I want to, tell stories? So I took a break after the Godzilla movie from 3D animation and started doing my own comic books. And working on my own characters. And that's kind of where I am at this point, where I'm just, trying to tell stories and then bring those skills to the plate at some later time.
Right.
And, go ahead and pursue from there. But, there you had to make a decision. It's not, there's just so much to learn in animation as far as digital animation that you have to really decide what you want to do and emphasize yourself in.
But, of course, everything hangs on the story. Boy.
It does. It does. Yeah, it does. Yeah.
But you seem to be more in tune with modern technology than most people if not any person we've had on the show.
Oh, yeah. I enjoy it. And it's a time-saving tool, really. Now, if I want to do drawn animation, which I got back to, I go ahead and use Flash or a Cintiq monitor or something like that, and I don't feel sorry about not having cells because it's great. You could do everything, in a self-contained place. It's not like you have a stack of cells and to worry about dust and that type of thing. Yeah, it's great. All the tools are there, and then the 3D tools are there as well. So and then you can put that in a 2D space or 3D space and kind of move it around and light it, that type of thing, with the tools available off the shelf. So
the most compelling argument I've heard about computer animation, because I grew up with hand-drawn animation, so I've always favored it. But One person said to me, well, the thing they like about computer animation, because you can actually make it look like hand-drawn animation.
Yes.
And making changes is so much easier.
Yes.
It is, huh?
That's true. That's true. Yeah, even with if you're trying to do traditional drawn animation, to scale stuff, you like one part of the body in animation, you can keep that. You can pull off new arms and legs and put them on. It's great. You can flip it, you can rotate it, you can use the stuff that you've already approved and cycle it and retime it and that type of thing, pretty much on the fly. Which, if you were going to do that traditionally, you'd have to sit down and shoot it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a good tool. It's a good tool.
You've got a lot of very intriguing things in your bio, like Forrest Gump and The Mask, which I love. What sort of things did you do on those? You didn't happen to do that. Was it a feather or a leaf in the beginning?
I did work on that shot. And
really?
That shot was the largest effects shot at ILM at the time. It was over 3,000 frames. And at that point, they had 8 films in the pipeline. And we, to paint that out, we had to paint out the dust and all that fun stuff. I was doing a lot of painting then. We load up 3 frames. I do my animation, blow it off, load up 3 more frames. Because that's all the disk space there was at the time. Now I'm sure it's huge. But yeah, worked on that shot. But primarily, I'm probably most pleased with the JFK animation I did. It's the elastic reality. How does it feel to be an All-American? Yeah, with Tom Hanks talking to JFK. So that was fun.
Oh, yeah. Right, where he was talking. Oh, so how did you do that sort of stuff?
That was with elastic reality. So that's a morphing program. It was the first time I'd used that. I'd show them one of my early duck soup commercials that I did for Levi's, and they figured, oh, well, he can do lip sync, okay. And so I worked with a guy named Doug Chang, who later became the main art director for the final Star Wars series. Mm-hmm. I was working right under him, and we crank out all these shots, and it was great. And just bring it into Photoshop, and after you've done your elastic reality stuff, and bring up some compositors, they composite it for you. But yeah, it was fun. Just really getting that JFK accent down.
So you'd actually take like a film of JFK, mm-hmm. and you just reanimate his mouth and whatever else you had to react.
Right. We frame matches, gestures, head bobs, that type of thing, and then that was one pass. And then go back and kind of rough in his lip position and morph the pixels together, to get his mouth to articulate, and then play it back and really trying to get it as seamless as possible. And then on the second pass, put Tom Hanks on there. And a composite, and you got it. It was black and white, and you grained it and tried to match the film, all the fun stuff. So yeah, it was a fun shot.
Wow. Yeah. And the mask was an elaborate effects thing.
That was fun. That was a project that I did afterwards, and I came in and was doing a lot of digital painting at that point. So that was really my first foray into computer animation. ILM kind of plucked me out of the Hollywood traditional effects world. From doing Addams Family Values was the last thing, and then they pulled me up from there, and I started doing some computer animation. So we were doing like the mask pulling off, and some of the early transformation of the rubber legs type of stuff, which was really kind of fun. So yeah. Tom Bertino was the main animator on that.
Unbelievable stuff. When I saw, and I thought this guy's terrific, but of course it was all these special effects that made him so terrific.
Oh, it was great. It was great performance too. Great performance. Real Tex Avery pushed the animation. It was really kind of fun.
Yeah. So, I don't want to run out of time. I want to hear about the things you're basically doing on your own, comic books and things that spin off from that.
Yeah. Towards the 90s, about 97 or so, I was doing so much 3D that I wasn't drawing as much as I thought I should. Right. So I kind of ventured off into self-publishing comics. And the first comic I did was Nemesister with my wife, and we did like 6 of those. And after that, we did Astro Thrill.
Excuse me, but what does Nemesister mean?
Nemesister, she's the Greek goddess of punishment. So it's kind of a film noir superhero. It starts out as a film noir story, and then it becomes more of a superhero, spiritual, mythological story.
So maybe are these other Timbuktu? Is that?
Timbuktu is a short story that I did that I kind of self-published. It's a story of ancient Africa, and I've come up with a story now that I want to turn into an animated property concerning the education emphasis in the Timbuktu. And,
Oh yeah, Timbuktu is a real city somewhere in Africa, right?
It does exist in Mali. Yes, yes.
Oh, in Mali.
It had over about 60,000 people. The height was in the 14th century. It was kind of the trade center. So people would come from all over Africa and the Middle East, etc., to trade gold and salt, and they would learn. It was a education center there. They had several universities there as well. So people would spend, it would take like 10 years for you to go through their educational system. But they'd learn about astronomy and geography and just everything, history, so anyway, there's a lot of stories there, a lot of hidden stories of voyages to the New World, believe it or not. There was one king that left and didn't come back, but he left with 2,000 boats. It's written. And see, the difference between Timbuktu and our written history is mostly oral history. So it's handed down from generation to generation by the griots. Yeah. And so this is the story that Mansa, I believe it is, left Timbuktu in the 14th century before Columbus with 2,000 boats, because one person had already left and came back. They would take the trade winds that were running, the currents that would run automatically, and went to the New World. And there's evidence in Mexico that they did land there.
No kidding.
The Olmecs, yeah. So,
wow.
Which is another story completely.
And then what's Astro Thrill?
Astro Thrill is my kind of tongue-in-cheek sci-fi story that started out as this half alien, half human that was trapped in an asteroid and wanted to come to Earth to play rock and roll and extreme sports, and he finally does. And he's being tracked by evil aliens and government agents, and he has things ensue. So I did a comic book, 24-page color comic book, 10-minute movie, animated film in Flash, and I had a compilation CD is what I put together with like 17 bands. I do one band song at the end called Astro Thrill. So that's available on my website.
Okay, and we're going to put his website on our site. So if you're listening to this on a podcast, go to our website, which is www.tooninanimation.net, and look for Craig Clark, and we'll have more information about him. Oh, and you do album cover work? My God, you are so versatile. I can't believe it.
Yeah, it's fun because when I was going to college, I was in bands as well. I was in one band called Sofa Music.
And what do you play?
I'm a drummer. I've been playing drums since I was 10 years old. So I had to choose between animation and rock and roll. It was kind of tough when our band was successful at the time in the little scene. You'd have A&R people calling your dorm room. It's like, so I had to decide, and I decided on animation. But,
wow, excuse me for interrupting, but it seems to me if I was a teenager and I had a choice between being a rock and roll star and an animation, there are no animation stars outside of just the animation business.
This is true, yeah.
You must have really been passionate then.
I was, yeah, and I just took a hard look at it, the long-term career possibilities with animation if I follow it through. I already initiated stuff at Duck Soup, so I got a taste of it, and I see that these guys are working forever. This is great, and you know how fleeting rock and roll is. So.
Right. And you get to do a little rock and roll now in your career.
That's true. So I kept in contact with the music industry. They kind of remember me from way back, And I guess probably the biggest album cover I did was for the Nymphs on the Geffen Records.
Oh yeah,
and it was. Voted the #2 album cover of 1991, the first being Nirvana's Nevermind. So that was kind of an honor at that point.
Oh, yeah,
so the band's making a comeback now.
And of course you could do the album covers on your own.
Yeah, that's freelance work. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I did that when I was working at Cool World at Bakshi's. So
I see.
Thing on the side.
So Oh, I see. The group you were in was Chorus of Soul?
Chorus of Souls, yes.
I see.
Yeah, we put out one album, and pretty much played Los Angeles area, and have a little underground following a little bit.
What is this? The independent animation series that you're doing? Are these your own series, or?
Yeah, these are my own characters. Called the Kustomonsters show, believe it or not. And I'm trying to formulate it off of the Rocky and Bullwinkle, where you've got like a main story and then you've got these shorts in between. So I've got the Kustomonsters as my main story, and I've boarded out like 6 of these cartoons. They're about 4 minutes apiece, and then I've got Woodstock Manor, which is another little short, and then the Timbuktu is in there, and I'll probably insert Astrothrill as well. So yeah, that's what I'm working on now.
No, so how will you distribute these? Are you
at this point probably podcasts and hopefully cell phones at this point. So yeah, that's what I'm going to self-finance at this point.
Wow.
So yeah.
So I mean, I don't know anybody in the animation. Well, there must be other people doing it, but I don't know them.
There's a few. When I was in the indie comic book field, and it's pretty much you're on your own. You publish your book, and you got to do all the cons and all that stuff. And I kind of got that spirit between that and the kind of punk rock independent music that you're on your own, the kind of DIY ethic. And so you can kind of take that with film as well. And with all the tools now with the internet, etc., you just go from there. Just hope it's good enough.
Wow. Yeah. Have you actually made some money this way?
Yeah, I mean stuff's been dribs and drabs, right. CD Baby, on my website, that type of thing. Yeah, mostly that type of thing. So yeah. It's a labor of love. I'm not getting rich on it.
Right. like this show.
Yeah.
So when you look back on your varied career, who are some of the outstanding people that you've worked with that have really impressed you?
Oh, Dwayne Crowther. That's the first person. Yeah. And Dwayne Crowther really took me under his wing and showed me the basis of animation. I still use those principles every day that he taught me.
What are some of those principles?
Oh, well, stay loose. Think about your scene before you go ahead and do it, which is great. What's the point of the scene?
Oh yeah.
Lip sync tricks, that type of thing. So yeah, staging is very important because he would critique some of my boards that I have here. Make sure that everything's clear and direct, which I picked up from a few folks. Ambi Palawota kind of took me under his wing.
Before you go on to him,
mm-hmm.
when you say the word staging, is that like how you lay it out in the frame? Yeah,
how you lay it out in the frame. What's important? What's going to tell the story in the sequence? What's important? The 3 different shapes that you should have: large, medium, and small. Just like music and art, slow, medium, fast, etc. Light and dark, shadow. Things that after you've got your initial kernel of an ideal, you kind of rework out. And drawing is the art of redrawing. Yeah, that's what I thought.
So go on now. I'm sorry I interrupted. But
no, it's fine. It's fine. And then on the same tack, Ambi Palawota, who was one of the main animators at Duck Soup at the time, he really took me under his wing and showed me, how to do classical animation. He was an old Disney guy. Started back in the Snow White days, believe it or not, and was there for 25 years. And so, he would share, his model sheet collection and tips and, critique my work. It's great. And those same principles I use today, which is great, with the digital tools. Right. And this was paper stuff. Right. And so, but I met so many interesting people. Des Yarnez Jr., which is great. He pulled me in on one of his pitches after Automan, which is, amazing. Steven Spielberg, worked with him, which was interesting. We were doing a motion control stuff on early Jurassic Park 2. And I hadn't met too many people from Cal State Long Beach, but Steven's a Cal State Long Beach student, alumnus. And David Lowery is another Cal State Long Beach person. He was like his main storyboard person. And all 3 of us were working on pre-visualization of Jurassic Park 2, which was great. And I'd also met him in London during the Amblimation days. He came by. That was his studio.
Oh, that's right.
There's folks like Ralph Bakshi, which he's a great guy, and you like my work, which is great. It's just there's so many fascinating folks.
Yeah.
Bill Melendez, another nice guy. The list goes on.
Well, as we were talking before we started recording this business seems to have so many nice, wonderful people in it.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Well, we have come to the end of another half hour. I can't believe, geez, Marie, all the stuff you do. I mean, normally, as I said before, I like to talk about one thing and really get into it, but you have so many things that are part of what you do that it seems more fascinating talking about them all. It's just really amazing.
Oh, thank you. I just enjoy it and always try to learn more. So that's kind of the key.
Great. Well, thank you very much for coming by today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Good.
And that's another half hour of Tune In to the World of Animation. You can read about all our guests, listen to their shows, sign up for a weekly podcast, and much more by visiting our website at www.tooninanimation.net. That's TOON in animation.net. The theme music is from Bobo Takes a Stroll by Frank Macchia. Our audio engineer is Ed Stevens, and I'm your host, Tee Busustow. Hope you'll join us again next week for another episode of Tune In to the World of Animation.